Deploying the control-op agent can be done in various ways. One of them is going to the download section as an administrator and follow the instructions for Windows, macOS or Linux. You can also use the UVM tool, such as Intune or SCCM. In this case, Intune, we already have added the application with all the different properties that are required, including the icon, the installation command, and other required settings, as well as the assignment. So if we want to do a required assignment that all enrolled devices will get it, we would add it here. In this case, we have it set up for the end user to deploy the agent from the Intune portal on the device. When we go back to the control-op interface and go to the Details tab, you should see all devices that were enrolled. This section also gives you a good overview of any common issues with fully customizable presets. For example, I changed the preset to one that is set up for me, where it automatically sorts by the device health score. It will bring in information about performance characteristics of the device and the networks they are connected to. However, a better place to look at the overall end-to-end experience of an employee and their digital workplace would be in our employee overview. The control-op employee dashboard gives a high-level overview of the experience with the digital workplace in your environment. Starting from the left, you see all the employees in my current environment, which is 108, and their relative experiences. An overview of how many applications, devices, unified communications calls there were, and most importantly, a score over time, which is depending on the setting from the picker. And as you can see here, there was definitely a dip in the score on April 30th. And if I click on it, you can even see the breakdown, how many individual employees were affected by it. I can drill down here. For example, I can click on the poor experience, which will bring me to the detailed dashboard with all employees that were suffering from a poor experience at that time. It also lists the most common problem, as you can see here, application crashes. Let me reset this filter. And can I go back to the overview? If I scroll down, you see some common problem areas like application crashes, blue screens of death, and it's very obvious that a lot of employees at this point were dealing with application crashes. So let's investigate that further by clicking on here. And here we get a summary of all the application crashes that were happening at that time. You see the totals, how many employees were affected, how many devices, and how many unique applications that had app crashes. And in this case, the most common crash was Microsoft Teams by a margin. As you can see, when I scroll down further where I get the details about which application employees, you can immediately see that Microsoft Teams was one of the most crashed application on this particular day on April 30th. I get some basic information, but I can drill down even further by clicking on this icon, which will provide me with a report which gives me more details about the specific application crash happening at that time. If we expand the description, we can see the various application crashes that were collected from Windows event logs, as well as more detail in the following event ID, which provides more information on the issue, including log files, the faulting module, which in this case is PLT Focus, which is our Plantronics device, and other relevant information that can help root cause analysis and troubleshooting. So, to recap, the three things we need is a script that disables the Bluetooth, a message sent to the user, and we're going to wrap this in a workflow, a low orchestration workflow, so that when the event happens, that these actions are being taken. Because maybe not all machines are online, so we can't do necessarily a mass healing that's effective. Let's go to the script settings So we click on the settings, we click on scripts. And as you can see, there's already various scripts in our environment. You can either add a script manually, which, depending on the operating system, we support multiple scripting languages. The most common for Windows would be PowerShell. Or in some situations, you want to add something from the script library. So this is the script library for our physical endpoint. There are some common remediation scripts that can be easily imported. For example, this clearing the Microsoft Teams cache, which is a common issue in many environments. You would just click on import script, which I've already done in my environment, to make that available across your environment. For this demo, we've already prepared a script to disable the Bluetooth headset. As you can see, this one is already written. In the future, it will be possible to create these scripts directly from the interface using GenAI, but in this case, I just copied it in as a new script. So let's have a look at our low-code orchestration, which can be found under alerting. First of all, we're going to give it a name, and then we need to define the conditions under which this orchestration will work. In this case, it is just going to be for Microsoft Windows. We're going to make sure that it immediately happens. So we can, for example, say, hey, if it happens 5 times, then run this orchestration. But in this case, we want it to happen immediately. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to look at the particular Windows event log. I'm going to add the condition that if the event ID is 1000 and the faulting module contains the word Plantronics, that should be Plantronics. That should be sufficient to catch when this event happens. So when there's a crash causing a Windows event log item 1000 that contains the faulting module Plantronics, or we could have put in the full DLL, but I'm making it easy on myself, then we want a certain action to be run. And the first one would be to disable the Bluetooth headset. In our environment, we also have a prepared user message that will appear on the screen for further instructions so that the user will be informed. So with that all set, I can create the alert. And let's have a look here. We'll go to one of my devices. And I'm actually going to use remote control to have a look at it. So this is my device. We see here the Plantronic Bluetooth device. For the rest, it's just a regular machine. So there we saw that Microsoft Teams crashed. The Bluetooth got disabled. And there is our message to clearly explain what is going on. So we disable Bluetooth, please use USB. In this message, we set it up to actually, provide more information. This is currently just going to our website. This could be going to an intranet page or, an IT page with more information. And of course, there will be an audit log of what happened, even if it's an automated action. We can, of course, see on the device page the particular device that we were looking at. We can see that the alert here was triggered a few minutes ago. It ran the script, the message script, it ran the disable Bluetooth script. You can actually see that the device was enabled. That's built into the script to kind of like report back the information. Now, this is on the particular device. But I can also go to system events and, for example, filter on alerts. And I can see that, well, in this case, it was only one user so far, which was the laptop that we were looking at. But if, you can see some other alerts here that were run automatically in this environment. And this was just one example of a orchestration or an automation. Our alerting engine is extremely flexible. Obviously, it could be based on the operating system, but all the different indexes, either the ones that are built in, which have metrics in them, data points in them, from, for example, the device, like CPU, memory, network, all kinds of, logon duration, all those kind of things, or even custom indexes that can be created for any metric. So even if a metric or data point is not included in our default agent, as long as you can create a script for it that retrieves that, you can put it in an index and again put on automation through this engine for anything you basically can imagine. The reaction to it can be various things. It could be, as we showed earlier, a script. It could be, for example, a webhook action. It could be an email notification, or it could be a creation of a ticket in ServiceNow, something we'll look at in another demo video. So we just looked at how we can use ControlOps DEX platform to basically remediate certain things reactively, although through automation this can of course also become proactively. But let's dig a little bit further in how ControlOps can be used to be more proactive as an IT operations team. And the first example I want to show is on a different account. So in this account we actually have a script that we created which retrieves Windows for the Windows operating system disk health information. So it basically retrieves this on a regular interval, in this case once a day. It will put that information in an index, and in our case we created a report for that. So let's just go to our custom report, and here we have Windows disk information. And as you can see, for all the devices in this, or at least all the Windows devices in this environment, it retrieved various pieces of information, including the model, the status, which is of course very useful to understand. If a disk stops reporting a healthy state, then it might be time to contact the vendor. You can get additional information like serial numbers or map this with a asset management tool. But this obviously can be run and alerted on a daily basis to see if there's any hardware issues that might need to be addressed proactively. In addition to that, I want to highlight our endpoint security solution, SecurityX, which especially helps with being proactive when it comes to things like vulnerability management, patch management, making sure that versions of applications are up to date, as well as ensuring that you are not suffering from any configuration drift when it comes to security, as well as ensuring that the tools that need to be running on the endpoint device, security tools such as antivirus, anti-malware, DLP tools, etc., VPN, are installed and running. And we do this through SecurityX. Now, the most important part to be proactive is the use of templates. And templates are basically twofold. So let's just create a one in here. I'm going to select which devices or which operating system. So in this case, I want to run this template on all my devices. And it basically gives the IT admin the flexibility to define what is considered kind of like the gold standard of endpoint security in their environment, meeting their requirements, ensuring that they can configure what they want to check for. For example, this could be operating system configurations for Windows, things like making sure that UAC automatically denies elevation requests. It could be auto run behavior settings. It could be, if we go to compliance, again on the operating system level, it could be things like, hey, is secure boot enabled? So all these things that the security ops team or the desktop IT team sets as, this is what the requirements that the device in my environment must meet. So like I said, configuration and compliance items, but also the presence of security controls. For example, if I can like select all of them, but nobody's probably running all 28 of them. But if I, for example, want to check if, let's say, Carbon Black is installed and running, I want to check for that. If you have other tools like Trend Micro or Sentinel-1 or Windows Defender, all these things can be checked for as part of this template. And then probably a very important one is vulnerabilities and patches. Now, vulnerabilities and patches differ in one way. A patch means, hey, software is out of date, but there is a newer version, so it will check for that. A vulnerability is basically, hey, software is out of date, there's an updated version that also addresses certain confirmed CVEs. And as you can see, we have our database that checks for 38,000 CVEs. So as a IT admin, I can basically configure what I want to check for. So for example, I'm just going to, randomly pick some configurations, some compliance, vulnerabilities and patches. And this is just where it will scan the device. So first, the agent will scan, is this, what is present on this device based on this list that I just configured. Then the next thing, especially important when you want to be proactive, would be to auto remediate. So for those items that can be remediated through a piece of software, for example, some of these configuration settings we talked about, for example, I can say, okay, I can change these settings automatically if they are not meeting the requirement that I set. And obviously, I want to always update all patches and all vulnerabilities for these devices. Next would be setting up a schedule. So I can scan multiple times a day. It's really depending on the requirements a customer has. We can do a daily scan. We can do multiple times a day. We can do it every hour if you want to for the scanning. And then obviously linked to that is the remediation. That can happen immediately after the scan. So if it's detected that it's missing a patch or if there's a vulnerability that's detected, it can do that immediately. Or I can, for example, say, okay, wait until a certain time of the day, maybe at the end of the day or at the start of the day. I can also enforce an auto restart. I can inform the user of what's going on. So this is all configurable to make sure that you find that balance between the user experience, but at the same time, keeping the security of the endpoint where it needs to be according to your standards. I get a summary of what I configured. In this case, I'm going to cancel out because I've already have various templates created. And based on these scans, it will update the issues dashboard. So some of the things we cannot necessarily remediate, where we can and it's enabled, it will, and it will not appear on this list. But things like certain agents, like in this case, for example, Tanium agent is missing on 6 of my devices. I need to have a software deployment tool, for example, Intune, as we saw earlier, to actually address that. But what can be remediated, should be remediated automatically. ControlOps DEX platform provides flexibility to create custom reports based on industry or business needs. We saw before that there's various reports built in out of the box, for example, for missing patches, for power and session events. But based on the indexes, and as I mentioned before, these indexes are built in or can be filled with additional information, you can create additional reports to the specification of the customer. A good example is we have a script that gets the Microsoft Windows 11 readiness. The information will be fed into an index. And from that index, we've already created a custom report, which we'll find at the end of the page. In this case, the Windows 11 readiness report. And for all the devices, or at least all the Windows devices in the environment, we can report back on which machines are capable or not capable, and then take action based on the reason for it not being capable. Either replace a device or upgrade a device. Another example would be, for example, one around power management, which could help companies to meet their goals around sustainability. In this case, I'm going to grab one from our script library, for example, to get the active power plan for all devices in the environment. I import it. And as you can see, this will automatically run once per day and put the data in full power plan. And if I go to that one, I can create a custom report and make it available to other admins. And if I now go back to reports, we have the active power plan report. As you can see, it contains information about each device, the different settings, sleep setting, hard disk settings, display settings, battery settings. And again, I can use this data to take action in my environment. Finally, let's have a look at role-based access control. In the text interface settings, under roles, it's very easy to set up a new role. Give it a name and select the permissions on a very granular level of what this role should be able to do. So in our example, we are going to give it the employee dashboards, device permissions. If you want to restrict the usage of certain scripts, you can exclude certain script groups. And I want to have the chatbot. In addition to the permissions, I can also restrict which devices this role has access to, or use tags. So in this case, this role will also only have access to employees, device permissions, and the chatbot for the device group Joel devices. I can assign users, or user groups. I can either do that from the role, or I can go to the individual user and change their role assignment. So in this case, this user will only get these permissions as defined in the role. So let's open up another browser window and log in as that user. And as we will see, first of all, many of the options here on the left side menu are no longer accessible. Only the employee view and the device view as well as the chatbot are available. And as you can see, instead of seeing all the devices like I have with this full admin role, 263, because I restricted the device group, this user will only be able to see devices in that particular device group and take actions such as remote control and running scripts.